Hey guys, in this video we'll be modifying our attendance application to allow potential attendees to upload a picture. The scenario is that when somebody's signing up for a conference, we want to give them the option to upload a picture, maybe a self-portrait, so that maybe we can put it on the ID for them when the conference comes. If they do not upload a picture because it's completely optional, then we want to make sure that we put a default picture instead. To accomplish all of these objectives, we'll need to modify our form, our database, and our supporting code. Let's start with the form. So to support a file upload, we need to include a file upload control on our form. So I go to the code for our form, which is index.php, and then I am just going to duplicate one of the existing form groups and then make the changes accordingly. Now for a form, we still need our label, and I'm going to say for avatar, and what it will print is upload image, and then I'm going to put in bracket optional so that they know for sure that they don't have to. Next, the input type that we need to use is of type file, and then our class is not going to be form control this time, but I'm going to use a custom class given to us by Bootstrap 4 that says custom-file-input. This will kind of give us a slightly remixed version of a file input control. I'll also go ahead and change the ID and name to avatar, so that's everything, and I don't need this attribute area described by, so I'll take that out, and I don't need this label underneath it either. And then I'm going to include a class custom file in our div. So instead of form group, I'm going to have custom file. And finally, I'm going to have a label below. So all of this is just required for the custom file. So I'm just duplicating this label, and I'm not going to have for. Instead, I'm going to have class equals custom dash file dash label. So if you actually look up on the internet for Bootstrap custom forms, you will actually see some references to these kind of custom labels that I'm talking about, or classes rather. And the text inside of this label will be choose file. So you'll see where this label falls into place when everything is printed. So the div is custom file as a class. Then we have a label, because every form control has its label. And then we have the input of type file, class custom file input with an ID and name. Now let's see what that produces. All right, so that's what it produces. And notice we don't have the top label appearing here. And also when we click, it's not working. I'm clicking it right now, it's not working. So I got a bit overzealous. And firstly, in a custom situation, we don't have that label here, at least not for the file input. So I'm going to take this label out, since we already have that bottom label saying choose file. And then for this label, I'm going to have to put in the attribute for avatar. So remember that all the labels have the for and the control that they're for based on the ID. So if the ID is avatar, then choose file is for or avatar control. And since we have no real visual cue, what I'm going to do is modify this setup similar to our phone where we had this small text being printed that showed a little help. So I'm going to just put underneath it something to say the file upload is optional, so that people who don't wish to upload a file know that they don't have to. All right, and I'm going to change this to maybe text dash warning so that it pops a bit more. So when I refresh, text dot warning doesn't look very good, so I'm just going to say danger, so it pops on the screen and there. So file upload is optional. So that may not be the best choice of color because that looks like an arrow. You can find a better one in your context, but I'll leave that for now. And I'll just put a slight BR in between these two controls. so that, yeah, so that looks a bit cleaner. All right. And then note when I click, it brings up that file search dialog. Now the file search dialog is going to be displaying every single possible file. And these are some script files I have on this machine. I don't need script files being uploaded as avatars. I need images. So I'm going to make one more adjustment to this control. So the input, I'm going to add an attribute that says accept and then equal. And then the value for that will be image/star. So that means I'm limiting the type of files that this control will accept to image types. So that's JPEG, PNG. You can always list them out if you want more limitations, but I'll just leave star. And so when I refresh and try that again, notice if I go back to my desktop, I'm not seeing any of those script files because now I'm only limiting it to image files. So now that step one is completed and we are allowing the person to be able to browse their computer, select an image and submit, we now need to modify what happens upon submission. So to do that, we need to go to our action page, which is success.php, and make some modifications to our post processing code. Here we will be introduced to a new super global variable called files. So I'm just going to make some space here. And then what I'm going to do firstly is I'm going to define a directory or, well, a target location for anything that is uploaded. So I firstly created a directory called uploads. So I just created a new folder. I did that off screen. So I created a new folder called uploads. And then this is where all of my uploaded files will be going. So you can go ahead and create that folder and then you can continue along. And then to set the target directory, I'm just going to define a new variable and I'm going to call it target_dir, short for directory. And then I'm going to set its value to be in string uploads/. So my target directory is my uploads folder. Next, I'm going to build a string that will represent the name of my file. So to build the string, I'm going to first start off with the target directory. So that's $target_directory. And then I'm going to concatenate that onto the name of the file, which I'm going to get by saying base name, which is a PHP function, and it receives some file path or file name. So inside of base name, I'm going to then reference my super global variable called files. And then files has two array subscripts. The first array subscript would be the name of the control. So just like with post, when we wanted the value coming from the first name control, we reference it by name. So in this case, we want the file coming from our file upload control, which in this case we called avatar, and then the attribute of the file that we wish to have. So in this case, I want the attribute name. So the attribute is just like when you right click a file in a Windows system and then you see the name, the date created, the size, all of those are file attributes. So in this situation, I want the name. Now that I have the name of the uploaded file, the next thing to do is to actually move the file. So I'm going to say move uploaded file, which is a PHP function. And then this one takes two parameters. It takes what file should be moved as well as the destination. So to make this a bit cleaner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another variable and call it original file or org file. And that will be equal to the original name coming through our post. All right, so org file is storing the file, the name of the avatar or the name of the file coming through our avatar control. And then I'm setting the target directory to be uploads. And then I am determining that this is my destination. So really and truly, I could have called this one destination. So I'm going to rename that to destination because what this will do is act as the destination path for this file. So by building it to say uploads / the name of the file, and then I am preparing it to be moved by this function when I say move uploaded file and say $original file and then comma $destination. So this function, once it's called, will look for the original file coming through our submit action and then create it at this destination that we have specified. Now I'm going to run a cursory test, but obviously if I submit the form, it's going to attempt to do a database entry, which I don't necessarily want. So I'm going to show you a little debugging trick where you can actually use a function called exit that actually stops the execution at that line. So in other words, when I submit the form, it will get this far. Once it hits the exit, nothing else will happen. So I don't want it to submit anything to the database just yet. So I'm going to use this to pause the execution and just validate that the file is moved as specified. So I'm going to go back to my form, refresh, fill it out, and then I'm going to choose a file. And I have two here. I have student details. So I'm going to choose student. And then I'm going to click submit. And well, nothing happened. How would I validate this? I would have to go to my file system, or I can just go back to Visual Studio Code and look at the contents of the upload folder, and nothing happened. And nothing happened because I made a mistake here. So the original file really should not have the name, but rather the TMP name. That's the attribute of the file that we want. So I'll explain what that means. Name is what we see. When I see student.png on the file system, that's the name. However, PHP is not tracking it by the name of the file, but it generated a temporary name for transit between the post actions. So for us to be able to actually move the file or interact with the file itself in any physical manner, we have to reference it by the TMP underscore name attribute. So in the org file variable that I created here, I'm going to say files, avatar, and instead of saying name, I'm going to say TMP underscore name. So move uploaded file will be moving whatever file has that temporary name to a more permanent destination on our file system. So I'm going to save these changes, and then I'm going to just refresh so it actually just submits everything to the form again, and click continue. And then we are going to go back to our uploads folder. And if I look inside the uploads folder, you see that a file has been created by the name student.png. Now, one thing we don't want is any two registrants uploading the same image with the same name and one overwriting the other. It's always good practice to rename your file to something that is unique, and that when you're storing it in the database, you are always sure that you're getting the correct picture for the correct person. So in a situation where you have people creating user profiles with unique usernames, then you probably want to rename the image to the username or to some unique ID that you're also storing in the database for this person. In this situation, the only two real unique things about any registrant would probably be their email address and maybe their contact number. And I think contact is probably more unique than email address in this situation. So I'm going to be renaming the files that they upload to have the name that looks like their phone number. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to have to change the way I set up the destination by setting whatever custom name I need here, but then I still have to add back the extension of the file, which I don't know what extension it is since I'm looking for images, which can be PNG, JPEG, or GIF. So instead of trying to force an extension, I'm going to have to dynamically determine the extension, but then I can on the fly determine the name because I'm collecting the phone number from this variable. So what I'm going to do is create another variable under org file, and I'm going to call this one ext, short for extension. And then I'm going to use a PHP function path info, into which I'm going to pass the file super variable. So I'm just copying this, but I'm passing in the name, not the TMP name, because the TMP name is only known to PHP. It only makes sense to PHP. So I want the name, which is going to be student.png. And then I'm going to use path info extension as the next parameter. So path info allows me to get certain information about any file that is given to it, and the information I want is the extension, and then that will be stored in my ext variable. Next, I want to modify my destination to, instead of passing in the base name of the file, I want to pass in whatever value is inside contact as a variable coming back from my form. And then I'm also going to concatenate whatever value comes back in my extension variable after finding out the path info of whatever file was uploaded. So then the destination will have uploads / whatever phone number the person entered dot whatever extension that file had. And then the move uploaded will store that file with that new name inside our uploads folder. So I'm going to run a test again with the same file and see the result. So now we choose the file, and I'm choosing student.png once again, and then I submit. And remember that we have the exit, so nothing really happens, but we can go back and then we see, okay, so I messed up the code a bit, but at least we're seeing the phone number and the file extension. But what we're not seeing is the dot, because Windows needs that dot in order to determine the file name. So I'm just going to modify the way I wrote this altogether, and I'm just going to put in braces and create one big contiguous string with interpolation. So now my destination looks like the variable target directory, which is upload / then the value coming back from the contact dot whatever value comes back from extension. So I'm going to save that change, and I'm just going to refresh so it resubmits and retries that operation. And then when I go back, I'm now seeing the phone number .png. So I'm just going to remove this file from the folder. All right, so now for each person who registers, whatever phone number they enter will be used to rename our file, and that file extension will always change based on what they put. So now that we're successfully uploading files to our server, now we need to modify the rest of the code so that the database knows about the uploaded file. So the first thing I want to do is modify my database using PHP My Admin to add the new column. So I'm going to my database, then to my attendee table, and then I'm going to modify the structure by saying I want to add one column after specialty_ID. So I'm setting up this column to have the name avatar path, be of type varchar 200, and I'm setting it to be nullable because once again, the picture is optional. And then we click save, and then that new column is now added. Now I need to modify my code to make sure that I'm passing in the file path of our uploaded file to the database, which would be in the column avatar path. So we know the destination because we built the destination. So we need to make sure that we're passing destination into our insert attendees function, and by extension we need to modify the function. So I'm going to take destination, and I'm going to add it as a parameter to the insert attendee function. And then I'm going to go over to my CRUD file where I know insert attendees is, and I'm going to make sure that I have representation of that new parameter. So it's expecting a new parameter called destination, or I can call it avatar path. So remember that we don't need to call them the same thing as long as they're in the right position. So avatar path will now be represented in my query when I come down here and I say comma avatar path. And then if I'm putting that there, then I need to have my parameter, which is being bound. So that's colon avatar path. And then I'll just make another line here and make sure I represent avatar path as both a parameter in the query and a parameter in the function. Now I'm going to execute a test where I fill out the form, select the same student.png file, and attempt to submit. When I do all of that, I get my success message and take note of the contact number, of course. I didn't change it, so that just goes to show you that it will not try to duplicate the file. It will always replace once it sees a file with the same name. So make sure that whatever name you're giving the file for each user is very unique. However, if I go to my database and I look at my attendee table and my data, I see that the new column now has values and the path is uploads slash whatever the file name was or has been changed to. Now, final step just to complete all of this would be to display this profile picture whenever the person submits successfully, as well as whenever one of the admin users views the profile for the user. So that means we need to modify our success.php page as well as our view.php page to make sure that we are seeing the image as it is being referenced on the person's database record. So what I'm going to do on my success.php page is go down to the section where the information is being printed, and I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm not really going to focus on getting it too aesthetically pleasing. I'll leave you to experiment and do that. I just want to show you how to display the image. So since we're on the success.php page, we know the destination is going to be somewhere in our project, and we just need to set up an image to have an image tag to have the value as whatever path is being stored inside of this destination variable. So I'm just going to go down to the section where I want to display the image, and I'm going to say img src is equal to, and let me just leave that blank for now. And then remember that whenever we want to put PHP content inside of an HTML tag, we need to have our PHP tag and echo whatever variable it is that we want. So I'm just going to say inside of these quotation marks, a PHP tag, and I'll just close it at the same time. And then I'm echoing my variable destination. Remember, destination is the path. So this will say something like uploads slash file name dot extension, and when this echoes that value, it will be the image source value. So if I do that and I refresh after submitting, then I see where my file is. This is the student file that I uploaded. Now, once again, I'm not too concerned right now about the placement. You can go ahead and fix it how you need it, but I'm going to just show you that whatever you do in the img tag affects that image. So if I think it's too big, I want it to be maybe have a width of 200 by and a height of 200, then I can say 200. And well, CSS is the best way to accomplish that. So I would actually just say style is equal to, and then set the width to be maybe 50% instead, and height to be 50%. So when I do that and I refresh, we see that the CSS would, okay, that's not much of a resize, but you see my point, whatever you do on the HTML side. So let me set this to 20 and 20, and then you see a bigger resize happen. And then I have some Bootstrap classes that can help me to make it look a bit cleaner. So there is a Bootstrap class that says rounded. So that one gives it a little round border. And if I do that and refresh, well, the effects of rounded aren't very visible. So I'm going to try another one and say rounded dash circle. So rounded kind of takes the sharp edges off the corners, but rounded dash circle actually creates a circular representation of the image. And there you go. So you can actually go ahead and use Bootstrap and whatever other tools and make your image look nice for presentation. Now, this was a success page. I need to repeat that feat on the view.php page. So I'm just going to go back, and I'm actually just going to copy this code because we'll be doing something similar. And on the view page, I'm going to put my img tag in my code, but then you notice that on the view page, we were referencing things by saying result and the subscript. So that means I can't call destination on this side. Instead, I'm going to just reuse this bit of code. And instead of echoing first name as the image src, I'm going to echo avatar underscore path. because when we did our select query, we selected star, and star brings back all the columns. So one of the columns that we get back is avatar path, which is storing the path to our image inside the database. So that is how we can dynamically load the image for the person who is logged in. So I'm just going to put this to the test. So I'm going to go on and log in. And now that I'm in, I'm going to go ahead and view one of these. So if I view one from before, then you see the image is broken. So we don't want that, of course, because this is broken. Well, this is broken because this record existed before we started putting in images, and there's no image to display. So we don't want that. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to find one that we just entered, and there we go. So the image is being loaded, not because it's being stored in the database, but the path to it is in the database attached to the person's record, and the file is present on our system. So we know where to reference for what. Now, the last thing that I want to do is make sure that if nothing comes back for that person, meaning they didn't upload an image or they registered before the feature was available, that we display something of a default avatar for them regardless. So I'm going to adjust the code that is printing our avatar, and I'm going to just put in what we'll call a ternary operator inside this string so that we can determine if whatever is being returned from the database is empty. If it is, then we want to print something. If it is not, then it's fine. So there is a function in PHP that says empty, which takes a parameter, which is probably going to be a string. It can be an array, it can be anything. But empty is basically just saying, is there any content inside of this variable? And then it returns a Boolean, which is a true or false. So the ternary operator that we're going to put, instead of a whole if else just to know what to echo, is we're going to say question mark, and then we say if it is empty, so this is going to return true or false. What comes after the question mark is what will be done if it is true. So if it is true that it is empty, then what we want to do is put in the value uploads slash, and I went and found some generic image. I'm calling it blank.png. So I want to reference that blank file if the string is indeed empty. So blank.png. So this will act as my default avatar for anybody without an image reference in the database. So if it is empty, then I want to echo this value. And then we have a colon that says, if this does not evaluate to true, what do I want? And what I want is to echo the actual path to the image. So right here in our image SRC, we're doing a quick if else, or making a quick decision to say, echo this value based on the ternary operator's output. So the ternary operator is saying, I want something that is going to return true or false. In this case, is the string empty or not? If it is, then I want to echo this or return this value so that it can be echoed. If it is not, then echo the actual avatar path coming from the database. So if I go back to my listing and this is one with it, so I can refresh and I see that it still keeps that image. If I go back to the list and go back to one of the first registrants who didn't get to upload an image, then we see that they get that default. If I go to any other one that didn't upload an image, and this person is giving me, okay, so I'm getting that default, Archibald, default, right? But then this attendee with ID 4 is not giving me that. So I'm going to look into this. All right, so by looking in the database, I can see what is happening. So the attendee with the ID 4 does have content in the avatar path. However, the problem is that the file name is basically .jpg, whereas their own is .png. So in testing, I had changed the extension and changed the files around. And so the first few registrants that we tested it with would have had .png, but the rest have the correct .jpeg. So that is why you are seeing that broken image. So it does work, but then it's still a concern because then it's saying that it can't find the file. So, well, we can determine if the file exists. You can probably do some research, but I'm not going to get into that. I just want us to get over the hump of uploading a file and having it displayed. So I'm going to just run through this with an entirely different person this time and a different phone number so that the file is different. So this is a different phone number, and I'm going to choose the file, and I'm going to go on the internet and find a different file. So I found a file with a fox, an image of a fox. So that's the avatar that this registrant wants. And then when I click submit, we're seeing the fox. And if I go and view attendees and I view that person's profile, then I'm going to see the fox as their avatar. If I look in the database, if I just refresh the database, then Archibald Douglas was inserted with a different file with a different file name.